With high inflation rates and salaries staying pretty much stagnant, it's about time we look at renegotiating our salaries, or if we're self-employed, look at increasing our rates. But knowing how much to ask for or knowing how much we should increase our rates by can be pretty scary. So because of this, in today's episode, we're going to be chatting about how to charge your worth. This is something I certainly struggle with as a business owner, so I'm very excited today to be joined with Stef Sword-Williams, founder of Fuck Being Humble, to share all of the tips we need to finally get paid our worth in 2024. Hi Steph, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I've got a bit of a confession to make. That's the first time I've ever sworn on the podcast.
Oh, wow. I feel honoured that it was in the name of Fuck Being Humble.
I mean...
Am I allowed to keep saying the word? Or
absolutely. No, absolutely. It's
okay.
Your brand, isn't it?
I'm always mindful. Not everyone loves it. I am often having to call it F Being Humble, which is also fine, but I can be flexible with that.
No, absolutely. Be loud and proud. It's your brand. And I am a huge fan of the brand and yourself. So I'm very excited to have you in the podcast studio with me today. So for those kind of listening, please introduce yourself to everyone listening.
Sure. So, hi everyone. I am the founder and author of Fuck Being Humble. So, I set up my business in 2018 to help people be unapologetically proud of their achievements and get over the fear of self-promotion. And I have written a book on the topic, which is Fuck Being Humble, Why Self-Promotion Isn't a Dirty Word. And it has actually sold over 10,000 copies, which was big news to me, to be honest. Highly surprised by that. But my main line of work is delivering motivational talks, keynote speeches, and interactive workshops on helping people around the topics of self-promotion and self-development that we need to have in our career in order to get the best results that we can.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the key word you just said there is motivational, right? And you are very motivational, very inspirational as well, especially about the topics you talk about. But before we kind of get into that, what actually inspired you to start Fuck Being Humble?
I always laugh because there's never a short answer. So I will try and split it into 3 reasons.
Yeah.
So the first reason that I wanted to start it was I personally wanted to do more public speaking. I was working full time in an advertising agency. But unfortunately, even though I had these skills in public speaking, they weren't getting utilised. And actually... the reality was there were going to be more senior people, mainly male, that were going to represent the company ahead of me. And I wanted to create something of my own. I wanted some autonomy. I wanted a creative project that wasn't dictated by budgets or clients, and something that I could express myself and also build a network around, because I was quite new moving to London and I was so inspired, but I wanted to, I guess, find my tribe a bit and do that in using a message that would attract people that resonated with that message. So that was the first kind of reason, for a very personal reason. The second one was that I attended loads of events and they were often dominated by male pale stale, which is a common phrase that is used to describe the lack of representation at events. I think things have come on a long way in the last 6 years. There is so much more diversity in thinkers, voice, background. It's amazing to see. But when I moved to London, when I came on the scene, it was just the same people who had often been like privately educated or inherited wealth or had run a business for 50 years. And as like a 25-year-old, you're sat there like, I don't resonate with any of this. So I was really interested in, why weren't we seeing inspiring young talent that is absolutely out there? How can we get them on stages and how can we spotlight them more? And from my research, it was that people didn't like self-promoting. So I was aware that there was great talent that was being overlooked because they didn't know how to self-promote to get themselves speaking at those events. And then the final thing is just like, I moved jobs 6 times in 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And I was a serial job hopper before it became that phrase. And so with that meant I had to do a lot of interviews, negotiating, moving jobs, getting used to adapting to new people and environments, pitching myself, getting a website ready, having a business card, all of those things that I'd experienced quite early on in my career under the age of 30. And I had loads of friends who would come to me as their like career agony aunt and be like, can you help me with all of the following things? So I realized that if my friends needed that help, there would have been, or there must have been, a gap in the market. And for me personally, I felt like the careers industry hadn't been shaken up in a really long time. Like, if you Google most of the things, it's like, shoot for the stars, level yourself up. Like, you know, it's like, it's just really kind of similar language. And I felt like I'd stumbled across this insight, which is we don't get the things we want because we are so modest in our situations, in our careers, in our life. And I wanted to, disrupt and challenge the way that society has taught us to behave in that respect.
Yeah. And what a journey you've been on since you were a 25-year-old.
Yeah, it's been a journey. So it's in its 6th year this year, which feels kind of mad. So I side hustled for 2.5 years working full time, and then in March 2020 I decided to make the leap and be a public speaker, and all international events got cancelled. So it's definitely been like turbulent with the pandemic and being a small business and my book coming out and it getting delayed and all of those things that didn't quite make it the fairy tale start to self-employment when I did take the leap. But I'd say in the last few years, I've really noticed a difference in how receptive people are to the message, how much more open they are to the thought of self-promotion. And even though it's going to take a lot more of a mindset shift, especially in the UK, it's that people have realised that self-promotion isn't really optional. It is essential, which is what I've been saying for the last however many years. But it's nice that people are coming to that reckoning by themselves. And so as they seek out support, fuck being humble is obviously a really clear message that they see and immediately go, actually, I think I do need to do that. So, I'm so happy and grateful with where it's got to. But it's absolutely like any founder journey been a roller coaster, I believe.
Yeah. Wow. Well, like I said, I've been really inspired by you, your journey, and just the messages you preach, especially when it comes to sharing that and encouraging women. I think a lot of people need more empowering. And I just, like I said, very excited to chat to you about, people getting paid their worth. But before we talk about that, I kind of like to get to know about my guests a little bit more. And I think the best way you can kind of find out more about someone's personality is their spending habits, right? So I'm keen to know, what has been your best ever purchase?
I wouldn't say it's my best ever, but I would say every holiday I've ever been on. Ooh, I very rarely regret. I don't think I've ever regretted going on a holiday.
Yeah.
There's something about when I get on a plane, I've only ever got on a plane to go somewhere good.
Yes.
It's always been an emotional high. I like to think I'm in my own rom-com, out the window, listen to some like romanticized playlist, but I'm always going somewhere that's going to take me somewhere.
Yes.
And I mean that both literally, but also from like an experience perspective or a life experience perspective. And so, I think the best money I ever spend to this day is always when I travel. I come back with a new lease of life. I'm such a sponge that I go somewhere, I come back and I've probably got a twang of the accent. Like New York is like the worst. At the minute I get there, I'm like, why am I speaking like this? This is like, I'm British, stop doing that. But I just come back with such a sense of fulfillment. And even, I went skiing at the start of this year and it was tiring and it was exhausting, but there was something so nice about being in the mountains and it's being completely different to the UK and London where I'm based. So I think I can't think of a time where I've been on a holiday and I've regretted spending that money. And so for me, travel will always be the best investment because it allows me to rest, learn, get inspired and just get out of my bubble. Basically. But I don't know if that's a bit of a boring, obvious answer. I mean, definitely for me.
That for me, I can strongly relate. I'm someone that loves to travel. I went on a cruise earlier this year around the Caribbean. Went to the Philippines last year. So I completely relate. I'm keen to know, what was your favourite holiday destination?
Oh God, that is so hard to narrow down. So my partner and I went to Koh Lipe, which is this really small island in Thailand.
Okay.
And it was quite literally like a remote island. I think there was like no more than like 102 people.
Yeah, I've never heard of
200 people on the island. And it took 4 hours by boat and this rocky, like horrible seasicky boat. But we got there and it was like paradise. Wow. It was just this beautiful, we were staying in these like 2-story huts on the beach and it was everything we imagined and more. And it was just one of those holidays where we speak so highly about it and we always say it's our special place where we'd love to go back too. Hilariously, and this is probably how bad I am with managing things also, on the final day of the holiday, it was the final morning of the holiday, we were having our breakfast. We were due to fly out at midnight that night.
Oh, gosh.
And I just checked the flights and I just passed my phone to my partner and I said, have we missed the flight? And he was like, yeah, because we were flying at midnight, but midnight of that day that had already been not midnight in the evening, which is like such a rookie error. And we always laugh that within like a boat was coming to collect us to take us to the airport, and then we would have lost our Wi-Fi. And there was a lot of, so whilst I like managed to book us new flights and new hotel because we had to stay an extra night, all these things, the one thing my partner did was like, I'll cancel the pancakes. I was like, good to know that is like top of your priority right now.
So handy.
You know,
handy.
saving us money in that way.
Always.
But no, it just really was that special place. But I mean, if you ever hear me talk, I love New York so much. There's just something about that place. I also just have a really soft spot for Spain as well. I was born in Madrid and we lived there when I was younger. So I try and go back to Madrid quite regularly, but also there's just something about the Spanish culture that I love.
Yeah, I went to Costa Rica and Colombia last year.
Nice.
I just love it. I taught myself how to speak Spanish last year for that reason.
Well done.
It's not great, but I made a start. I was able to have conversational convos when I was out there. But yeah, no, I love that. And I guess on the flip side, what has been one purchase you strongly regret?
Oh gosh, I mean, I could probably answer this with so many answers. Before we started talking the podcast, you asked if it would be about like fashion because I love styling and clothes. Ironically, the first thing that came to mind was bad fashion choices because I do love fashion, but also I think sometimes regularly I miss the mark. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I've outgrown that, to be honest, but there was one particular thing. I did fashion communication promotion at university and it really was like Mean Girls. Everybody was dressing up to the nines every day, like full face of makeup, hair was done. Like even if it was a 9 a.m. lecture and everyone had been out the night before, they nobody wore hoodies or Uggs. It was like fashion, which meant everybody was in their experimental phase, myself included. And we went to Berlin on a trip and I was wearing this headband that had metal spiked studs on. Mm-hmm. It was like it kind of was like part goth, part Statue of Liberty. Like it was bad.
I shouldn't laugh.
It was bad on every level, but this is where it gets worse. We went to a like political building. I think it was the Reichstag. I don't know.
That does ring a bell.
That might be really bad if I've got it wrong. But basically, we went to this political building where you have to put things through security, and they confiscated it because they thought it was a dangerous weapon. And actually I look back now being like, I'm quite grateful they confiscated it so I could no longer wear it. So I would say the endless bad fashion decisions I've made and still do make sometimes. But yeah, I like to think I'm trying to be a little bit more strategic on the longer term useful purchases rather than look at me, I'm trying to be alternative or edgy in some way. So yeah, that would be the part of my personal brand that maybe let me down over the years that needed some development for sure.
To be fair, like you said, it was the experimental phase. I think your fashion, I can't speak for when you were younger, but I think your fashion is 10/10. So that makes you feel any better.
Kind of you. No, I mean, I love, everyone always, I'm a very colourful dresser. I like wearing, although I'm not right now, but I just love the feeling of wearing colour and how it actually helps the confidence. But yeah, we won't go through the archives of my bad choices for sure.
Well, I mean, if you want to share, I'm more than happy to kind of share, photos for the listeners to kind of relate to. But no, like I said, experimental phase. But
you can't grow without having that phase, I feel.
No, you can't. I don't want to. I went through an era when I was in school where it was like the neon era. So, you had like the leg warmers, the like mesh, like hat. Yeah, I'm not going to get into it, but I feel
you know what one of mine was? Coloured tights. So I'd wear like a dress with like red or green tights, which I feel like I've seen people wearing red tights again. And I was like, I really wasn't working it when I was doing it. But yeah, coloured tights was one. And that was when I was like 16. So I would say old enough to know better, but yeah.
I mean, surely red tights with your new red fuck being humble jacket?
Well, yeah, it's on brand. On brand before I even built the brand. Who knows?
No, I love that. So when looking to get paid our worth, I believe a lot of people really struggle with that. And I think, self-promotion, when it comes to it, it's really important, but again, something people really struggle with. So I guess when we're looking to get paid our worth, what are some of your tips to actually self-promote in a way that maybe doesn't make us feel icky? Because I think some people feel a bit conscious of like self-promoting. They might feel like they're maybe being big-headed. So yeah, what are some of your top tips for self-promotion?
So I think what we have to remember is basing it on facts. People find it icky because they think they may be like over promising or over delivering or claiming that they've done more than they have. And actually it's like, let's just look at the facts. So very simply, and it's very fresh in my mind because I delivered a talk on this morning, I would really recommend that everybody in their folder, on their phone, in their photos, makes a proud moment folder.
Love.
And in that, you screenshot any positive feedback you get, any times at work when you're happy, any like projects you've completed, just things that you're like, I'm so proud I did that. This is great. Like, I really want to remember this. And what that ends up being is a visual archive that you can come back to when you've got imposter syndrome, when you're wobbling, when you're prepping for performance reviews and it's the end of the year and you're exhausted, or you're prepping for a pitch for a client and you're like, oh gosh, I feel out of my depth. Can I do this? And then you go back and you're like, yeah, of course I can. Look at all the things I've done. So I always say like self-reflection, most important thing. So before you even start telling everyone about it, you actually have to start reflecting and making that a habit. It's the most basic but overlooked thing that people need to do. So I would recommend doing that every Friday, just literally writing down 2 or 3 things you've done that week that you're happy with. It doesn't have to be huge, it doesn't have to be massive. It can be having a difficult conversation. It can be saying no to things. It can be saying yes. It can be, I don't know, collaborating with someone. Like, don't make it into these huge milestones that feel unattainable. But the more regular self-reflection we do, not only is it helpful for us when we come to negotiating, but you're already doing that mental work in the background of believing you're worth it. But if you never reflect and then it gets right before that pitch or that negotiation, then you are going to wobble and be like, who do I think I am? And actually the more self-reflection you do regularly, you're building that confidence mindset of I'm actually worth what I'm asking for. So that's a great place to start. I think the second thing that's super important is speaking to people and understanding like rates and also how other people self-promote to get the right results. So, when I speak to people, they have such a bad perception of self-promotion. And self-promotion can be done in so many different ways. Like how you self-promote and how I self-promote will probably be very different. But actually, whether it's speaking up in meetings, whether it's posting on LinkedIn, whether it's sending a newsletter, whether it's doing an annual report, whether it is, I don't know, writing things down, like finding ways that you can self-promote and get comfortable with what you're doing and seeing that growth is really important. And that's why I say, like, speak to other people about what helped them to get negotiations and what helped them to get that increase or pitch that client. Because sometimes it only takes somebody to say, oh, they're actually really interested in winning awards this year. So when you're pitching an idea, you should say that to them, that it's an award-winning idea or it has the potential to be. So it's little things where it's like, don't struggle alone with trying to create your self-promotion or build your reputation in order to get that financial outcome. Like, ask people what worked for them, or if they've previously worked with that business or that boss or that colleague, what was the thing that really helped seal the deal when they went through that, because that could be a really good insight for you. And then I would also just say, like, it's really important to make sure you're kind of tracking the market as well. So whether that is like industry news, what's going on, like are there huge layoffs everywhere? Is it that, the company only makes, I know some companies that only make pay rises every 3 years. So you actually can't do that. And it's about progression plans. Or, I know, for example, the freelance market has been quite tough for a lot of freelance over the last year. It's been very inconsistent. Some people are having to just accept certain rates. And I think the openness in that discussion is really important because social media will leave you thinking that everybody is killing it, making loads of money, and they're all doing it through this one approach. But actually, when you peel back the curtains, it's very rarely the case. People have got 10 different revenue streams. They're working 3 jobs. They got an introduction from their mum's friend, and that's how they're speaking at 10 Downing Street. All of these things that we very easily overlook as being reasons why people do progress, we have to remember that we don't always start off at the same point.
Yeah.
We don't. No. And actually comparing ourselves to people financially and professionally in terms of progression, I know it's so easy for me to say, but it's just never a good idea. And the more you can reduce that, the better, because ultimately it's the thing that will keep you feeling like you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
So I think what's important is to have your own metrics and your own measurements of what good looks like. And, you know, for me personally, I talk quite openly about it. I'm not trying to be the next like Stephen Bartlett and earn millions and be on every billboard and everyone know what I'm doing and stuff. Like, I'm not even trying to reach like 1 million in my business. Like, I'm very like, I know what I want to earn. You know, the nearest thing that I'm trying to reach at the moment is a wedding budget. Like, that is honestly and truly, I've never really been very good at saving. And that is the next big thing for me that I'm having to do as an adult and think about it. But when I'm accepting jobs or when I'm taking work, in the back of my mind, that is my motivator at the moment. I'm like, right, that could pay for, I don't know, like the stationery or that could pay. And, you know, you are kind of like, it's important that you strive for what you need and your self-promotion mirrors that. So just because you've seen someone doing a radio show and they've got a radio slot once a week, that might mean that that person has to get up every Sunday and they have to give their free time, and that's how they're doing that. That may not be financially beneficial for you, or that might not be the self-promotion that's going to help you get the financial outcome you want. So be mindful of what you're seeing online and absolutely ask around, but make sure that you're choosing the self-promotion that's right for you and the financial goals you're trying to reach.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think you could touch on a couple of amazing points. Firstly, having that folder. So last year, or maybe the year before, I started doing a milestones list on my phone because, again, being a self-employed entrepreneur, it can be really hard. You've got the ups, you've got the lows, and it's in those lows that sometimes you do need to have that reflection, being like, it might be a quiet 2 weeks. And for me, that really stresses me out because I like to have things under control. But during those times when I'm really low, I looked back at that milestones list. I'm like, okay, Ola, look at what you've achieved. And I told a lot of you guys listening to actually do the same when we first started the year, because, again, we really underestimate how much we actually achieve in the year. And I think, again, it can be as big as, I don't know, buying a house, or being as small as saving your first £50. I think it's what you said. What does good look like to you, rather than comparing yourself to other people online, which is so easily done. It's so social media can be so toxic that sometimes you do need to understand what your level of good looks like. And also, when you're self-promoting, what are you promoting for? Like, what are your key aims and why do you want to put yourself out there? I'm sure you have goals. I've got goals alike. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both of us have used quite big words that may be a bit intimidating, which is milestones and proud moments. But I guess also for people to think about, I know somebody that made just a happy folder. So a folder of things that made them happy that year. And actually, happiness doesn't always equate to success.
True.
So I think it's important to stress that as well, that your happy folder might have been like having a Mackey's in the park with your mates. But, you know, so after a long week, and it's not about like the big glossy things or the milestones. Actually, there are moments that we need to reflect on that don't always have that career progression link that can help to influence how we do present ourselves and what it is that we strive for. So yeah, I think everybody should really get a handle on what it is that they are looking to get to, and try and ensure that the narrative you're putting out there about yourself is helping you get closer to that point, rather than following what other people are doing because you feel like that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think another point you touched on as well was speaking to people, which, again, people find really daunting. I'm the same. You never want to come across that you're being intrusive with people. But I think the more you start speaking with people, the more you realise you're probably in the same boat with a lot of people. Like I said, running a business on my own sometimes can be really hard. And it's only when you start speaking to other people, everyone's in the same boat. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one drowning here. But everyone can relate, whether it's another content creator friend or if it's someone else in their career as well. I'm in my 20s. There are a lot of people in their 20s or people who are also self-employed. Just get it.
I agree. And I always say to people, if you've not got that network right now, go find it. Don't settle with your current network. It's more of a mistake, because what you can end up doing is, comparing yourself to friends that you went to school with that have already bought houses, because they may live in a town that's cheaper for them to do that, or they may have been living at home with their family. And there are things that we can get caught up in that don't represent our present values or our present ambitions. So absolutely go find the people that are on similar paths, or maybe are a few years ahead of where you want to get to, that you can speak to openly, honestly, and vulnerably to, that you feel like you can trust when you're speaking about this topic. Because let's be honest, money is quite a sensitive topic, and it's something that, especially in the UK, we're not encouraged to speak openly about. And, you know, I did a speech recently, and I wanted to openly say that this financial year just gone, I'm not going to earn as much as I earned the previous year. And I'm sure some people will look at that and be like, oh gosh, they must not be doing well. And actually that was one of the happiest years of my life. So I think it's like this need to constantly be on the up is essentially just like capitalism at its best, right? And I would be much happier having a zigzag if during those zigzag moments, what I'm actually identifying is, I didn't earn as much that year, but I still managed to get on 4 holidays. I lived abroad. I had a work-life balance, and I didn't miss out on much. You know, or maybe one year I am doing bigger deals and I'm earning more, and it's like, right, what was it? It was because I sold in that massive chunk of a fee at that point. So I think this like upwards progression is not realistic, especially when you're running a business. It's going to be up and down. And I'm sharing that to say, like, that hasn't knocked my confidence. I'm not panicking that I didn't earn the same as I did the year before, because actually maybe the year before was an anomaly. Maybe that was just a like really good year, but maybe that's not the version of what consistency looks like. And I've actually been listening to a book recently about how the word consistency is quite toxic, because what it's actually saying is that we show up at a great level at all times. It's like, we can't always do that, right? So, and our businesses can't, and we can't as individuals. It's what we go through as life. So I think just be kind to yourself when you're seeing those changes in income, in salary, in negotiations. It's not always reflective of your performance. It's not always reflective of whether you've achieved too much or not enough. Actually, it can be reflective of the positive decisions you've made, because you're getting closer to what it is that you actually value.
Wow. I'm so glad I'm hearing this, because I resonate with a lot of what you're saying, and I think I personally really needed to hear it, and hopefully some of you guys listening really resonate with that a lot as well, because again, I think some of us are worst critics, that we really are quite harsh on ourselves, and sometimes we just need to give ourselves some grace. But obviously we're also talking about getting paid our worth, and obviously there's lots of people that are probably listening to the podcast today, they're in their careers, and they're aware of the fact that salaries are stagnant, cost of living is going up, they want to renegotiate their salary but are scared because they don't think they're worth that, you know, that increase. So what are some of your tips for those that maybe want to renegotiate their salary but don't know how to go about it, or don't believe they're actually worth that increase in pay?
So firstly, I always remind people, if you don't ask, you don't get. And if you want to get, you need to be the first in the line. So you've got to speak about it. So people are often like, oh, it's a difficult time, so I just shouldn't ask. Terrible thought process. You absolutely should ask, because you want to be first in line for when it's not a terrible time and when the company gets some money, or when they can afford to offer you that pay rise. So don't like minimize yourself or minimize your expectations just because the company's going through a difficult time. At least state what you want, and that would open up the conversation of dialogue around, if it's not money, what else could we look at during this time? So that would be my first thing, is if you don't ask, you won't get. And thinking that your hard work will be rewarded accordingly, it's the biggest mistake to make. I made it in my career and it's not great at all. There has been research come out, I think it was from Forbes, about the fact that people can get higher salary increases if they move jobs more regularly.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Like it or loathe it, it is the reality. It happened to me pre-pandemic. I moved jobs every year and I got a promotion and a pay rise. And in some cases, I was able to double what I was looking for and certain things like that. So I would also say, I'm not encouraging everyone to leave at all, but what I would say is give yourself a timeline and give the company a timeline of when they need to do something by, because we often get stuck in situations that don't serve us, that don't financially reward us, or we're being underserved actually, or undervalued, and that can be a problem. So there's a story I talk about in my book where a friend of mine who's working in the north of England is on a salary of 40 grand, and she had her performance review and they offered her a pay increase of £700.
700
pounds, yeah. And she'd worked her arse off.
Wow.
And it was a real like slap in the face.
Yeah.
So she was like, right, I'm going to go fish around and see what there is. So she went to a big competitor and they offered her 70 grand.
Wow.
So a 30 grand pay increase.
Wow.
After she'd been offered £700 more. And after that, she came back to the company and said, I can't believe this, but I've been offered 70 grand. And they were like, we'll match it.
Wow. That just goes to show, doesn't it?
There's more to the story.
Oh, no,
she
go
goes
on.
back to the new company and she's like, can't believe it, but they've offered me more. And they said, we'll give you 80 grand and a company car. And she went back to the old company and they said, we'll give you 100 grand.
From £700, the insult.
To a 60 grand pay increase. That's how much they were undervaluing her.
Gosh.
And they came out to be one of the worst companies with the gender pay gap when the results came out, unsurprisingly.
Yeah.
Obviously, she jumped and went to the other company. But it's just a real honest representation. I have to say she worked in the finance industry.
Yes.
So for those creatives out there, sadly, just to manage expectations, we don't usually get 60 grand pay increases. But it is a reminder that, companies will try their hardest not to pay you.
Absolutely.
It is a profit over people mindset, and it has been for a long time, but pretty badly at the moment. So I think you should fish around, see what's available, and be really strict with what it is that you are willing to accept and not. And I don't mean that in the way that you should cut yourself off from opportunities, but avoid devaluing yourself.
Yeah.
And if they can't offer you the number, what else can they offer you? So that's something whether you're working for yourself or you're working for a company, what else can you get from them that would help you in any forms of life? Extra holiday, flexible working, sending you on training plans, allowing you to public speak so it builds your reputation and you get visibility. What are those things? Traveling more, like what are the things that you actually value that you could negotiate that isn't money when we are going through a difficult climate?
Yes.
Because just because they haven't got the money doesn't mean they can't find ways to reward you and celebrate you. I would also say, just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't be done by you.
Yeah.
So often, asking for things, we can be like, well, nobody else in the company's got it. It's never been signed off before. And it's like, doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah.
A friend of mine that I worked with, she pitched a completely new job title that didn't exist. Even in the industry, it didn't really exist. And they valued her so much, they signed it off within like 4 hours because they were like, we know you will make this work. And so she's always been an inspiration in my life and in my career as someone who, that thing of don't wait to be invited, invite yourself and ask for it for what you need and what you value, because it's very easy to get the money, actually still not be happy is the truth of it. So money isn't the be all and end all. I really encourage people when they're thinking about negotiations to think about, what do I need right now, but also what do I need in the next 4 to 5 years?
Yes.
And how am I going to get to that point? And can this company logistically and honestly get me there? And if not, do I need to look at other options? The alternative to moving as well is that you look at external income sources.
Yes.
So whether that's selling clothes on Vinted or buying expensive handbags and renting them out on her or by rotation, or whether it's, starting a side hustle or it's a passive income product. That's something I wish I had been spoken to about at the start of my founder journey, was like, make money in your sleep.
Yes.
Design one digital product, sell it online, and then you never have to do anything again for it other than promote it. And I have like a CV product to help people revamp their CV. And I also have a pitching yourself guide. And they're both £20. They're in the shop. I never promote them. But every week I get like 100 quid from them.
Yeah.
And it's like just nicely ticks over. So a lot of people think that, the only way they can get the money they want is through the company they work for or
sure.
through the clients they work with. And actually, there's a lot of different ways that, and you talk on this topic really brilliantly. And so does Emily from VestPod.
Yes,
she wrote a great book called You're Not Broke, You're Pre-Rich. And it was more about, rather than trying to get more money, it was like, how can we make the money you've got work more effectively?
Yeah.
Which I'm terrible at, to be honest. But that I remember reading that and being like, we're constantly trying to get more, but there are also the opposite is like, how do we make the money and investments we have more effective in terms of, you know, the way it grows or the way that we can save for the long run.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, like you said, just because it hasn't been done before, don't let that put you off. And I think a lot of us, well, a lot of the people I know that listen to the podcast and also follow me online, we are all on a corporate ladder, right? Naturally, because when you go to university, you're kind of forced to go work corporate, whether regardless of the industry, you are climbing that ladder and you want to get to the top eventually. And I think a lot of corporate structures are so rigid, and like you said, not many boundaries have ever been pushed in the last few years, right? But I think our generation or the next generation that are coming through are really vocal about what they want. And I think it's great to see because more and more of us are actually trying to like not push the boundaries and be like, you know, chaotic, but at least just ask different questions, maybe challenge the status quo. Would you agree?
I agree. No, totally. And I think one thing I'd say as well, it's always easier to negotiate as you're going into the building. So when you're doing those interviews, if they've said, yeah, we're really keen, here's the offer, you negotiate that hard because once you're in, you're in.
Yes.
And you won't get a performance review for 12 months and all of that. So get as good an offer as you can when you're at that interview stage, because that is when you'll really get the most impact. Otherwise you're waiting then until the next round of reviews. But yeah, I'm always really excited to see how people are asking for their worth in different ways. And even myself, like I was speaking at an event in the UK and they couldn't pay me the fee that they needed to. In fact, they needed to be paying me about 5 times more. And I said, okay, well, I want you to get me a speaking gig in New York because that's where I want to take my business.
Wow.
And I know you've got the connections that can do that. And they were like, yeah, we'll put that in. They were like, you can speak on our podcast, you can be featured on our website, we'll get you a speaker slot on this stage that we're kind of supporting with, and we will make some introductions to other people. And I was like, great. Which, to be honest, has springboarded me building my business in the States. So I think, again, that tactical thing of being like, right, how else can I benefit from this if it isn't financials? But of course, always try and ask for the money first.
Wow, I'm going to take notes from that massively because, again, I think, like you said, for some people, we're maybe having to kind of not devalue ourselves as such, but I think the climate's tough, right, for a lot of companies. So sometimes we're not in a position where we can ask what we want to be charging. So I think that was really brilliantly kind of shared in the fact that, you know, yeah, just because it hasn't been done before, challenge the status quo and you never know where you might end up. But I guess, obviously, we spoke about, you know, getting paid your worth when you're working and you're employed. But when you're self-employed, setting rates can be very hard, especially when you've first started. You don't know what to charge, right? I remember my very first brand post when I first started All Things Money 4 years ago. I got paid £100 to create this Instagram post, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making £100 just to post on Instagram. Obviously, I've learned very quickly that is very low. But I guess, you know, we're all in the same boat, especially when you're very first starting. So when you are self-employed and you, again, are looking to get paid your worth, how do we go about setting our rates?
First of all, I want to say I totally resonate with that. My first speaking gig, I got I think it was £150 for like an hour. And I was like, £150 for an hour? That's amazing. Was buzzing. But I also think there's something nice about that because it just shows you the value of what we see and what we enjoy doing.
Yes.
In terms of self-employed people and how they can get their value, there's a few different things I'd recommend. So firstly, only you can give yourself a pay rise. So you have to be the person upping your rates. Mm-hmm. Clients are not just going to come to you and say, hey, we've decided we're going to give you an extra £500 this month. Right?
No,
so you have to be the person upping your rates and controlling that. And sometimes I just throw in an extra 500 to the number to see if it lands.
Yeah.
All they have to do is say no, and then you bring it down. But it's worth asking that extra £50 or that extra £100 because it's just those small increments that will help you. And once one person says yes, it gives you that grounding to say, I can do this again. The second thing I wanted to say was, it's okay to change your rates per client.
Interesting.
I think a lot of people won't speak openly about this, but I will happily, which is I still accept jobs that are 3 times lower than what I would like to be paid because I see the opportunity, or because I like the business, or because I think the impact is there. And of course, I've worked on my confidence and my skills to charge higher rates as I've gone up. And I do have to give myself a salary boost and, ask for those higher fees. But I do also, at the end of the day, I have bills to pay. I'm a realist. And I don't want to say all money is good money, but until you're in a place where you are like, I can afford to say no to this, or I'm just at max capacity and I physically can't say yes to this, I don't think anyone's too big to take on certain fees. Do you know what I mean?
I get that.
Some people may completely disagree with this, and it might be a bit of a taboo subject, but I think, if someone came to me still with a £200 fee, it wouldn't be a absolutely no, I'm offended. For me, it would be looking at, right, what's the benefit here? What's the gain? Am I helping them? Can I reach a new audience? Can I get video content from this? All of those things that could be a benefit to me. And not getting too rigid about that, basically. And not being offended or not letting that devalue how you see yourself. So you can accept a lower fee, but also still be charging high fees. So it's not, this is what people must think I'm worth now. No, if some people may think you're worth 10 grand, some people may think you're worth £10. Sadly, that's just what, the difference that people may have to spend in budgets. It's not representative of you and your talent. But I do think, you decide what you're willing to accept. Don't let people influence you or tell you, oh no, you should always stick to your fee, never lower it. I don't think that's honest feedback. If I'm honest, I don't think that's what a lot of founders do. And I think there's a bit of a false narrative around stick to your fees and don't go lower. I think you have to look at it as a business decision of, have I got enough to pay my rent? Am I adding to my wedding budget? Like I said, is this going to get me my flights to Spain or New York? Really think a bit more like, what does this allow me to do? And there's a great question. There's a really great book called The Next Question Is, and it's got lots of questions to help you think about situations. And it's like, what's the cost of doing that thing? Or what's the cost of not doing that thing? And I think it's a really good question to reflect on when you're saying yes or no to opportunities. Is, if you're already burnt out and exhausted, the cost is that you're going to be even more exhausted and you're not going to be able to rest. Cool. It's a no-brainer. What's the cost of not doing it? Well, then I might not get the exposure in front of the people that I know are big decision makers. And the cost, or, it may be that not showing up at that event could affect how people see me in future situations. So really getting quite clear again on what you are willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. And, there's certain brands that come to me and are like, no brainer, I'll do it for free. Like, I would absolutely do it for free. Or certain charities or certain people. It's like, absolutely, I'll be there in a minute. So I just think a bit more honesty and transparency from other founders on this conversation, because again, social media in the online world and the success stories will lead you to believe that people have set extremely high rates and they never lower their rates. And I just don't think that's believable.
No, I agree. And I think, like you said, this is where speaking to people comes in, right? Like, I've spoken at events before where I probably didn't value myself and my worth, and found out an equivalent speaker's doing very similar things, charged double, you know? So in that respect, chatting to people, what are your industry pals, what are they charging, etc., etc. Also, like you mentioned, looking at, okay, what's the cost of not doing it? I did promise myself this year I wasn't going to do any more free things anymore, because I've done a lot of free work in the past, and as great it is that I'm making an impact, sometimes when you are burnt out, you're going out on a Wednesday evening and it's for free, and sometimes you're thinking, why did I say yes? But likewise, what is the cost of maybe not doing that? So again, it's a double-edged sword. You always have to kind of reevaluate, don't you?
Totally. And there are lots of times where people get in touch and I say, I'm sorry, I'm at max capacity and I have to prioritize paid gigs. And I make the point of saying that to remind them that my time is valued. I would also say, if you are ever accepting a lower fee, as I said before, in relation to the example when you are working full time, always state your worth.
Yes.
So if someone approaches you and asks you to work for lower than your rate, just say, I would usually charge this. Can you meet me at this budget? And if not, and you choose to go forward with them, as long as that's been stated, you can say, I'm happy to accept this fee on this occasion as I'm keen to work with you. But moving forward, all work will be required to be spent at my normal rate sort of thing. And again, it really helps with just setting that tone so that if they do enjoy working with you and they come back for more, then you're like, okay, let's move that on to the original fee then. But having that clear conversation, and that's something that you've got to do as a freelancer and a founder, is just like the difficult, uncomfortable conversations. And it can be difficult. I think one of the hardest things is somebody else putting a value on you and your work.
Always.
I pitched an idea recently and I was like, manifesting wedding budget. I was like, I want 50 grand. I want a minimum 50 grand. 50 grand. Not that we'll all go on the wedding, but I was like, that would just be lovely.
Yeah.
Got nowhere near that. Like literally nowhere near that, because somebody has decided, we decide that that's how much it is. And that for me is one of the hardest things. Is more when it's not something that you set the fee of. So I know when I'm doing a talk, I'm like, well, these are my rates. You book me or you don't. But this was more of like a prospective idea.
Yes.
And it was up to them how much money they wanted to put to it. And that was quite a difficult pill to swallow when I didn't get what I thought I was valued or what I thought the idea could be. And I think, again, having mentors that you can speak to, having friends that you can speak to openly and honestly about it, but also not letting a lack of budget stop you from repitching in the future. Or stop you from sending that to a competitor and getting someone else to pay for it. You know, your work shouldn't be lost energy. So I would always recommend, if they say no and you were really excited about them, go take it to their competitors. Because I bet they'll bite your hand off for it, right? So think more strategically about the work that you've invested in and see how you could make that work across other areas to help finance that thing that you want to make happen.
No, amazing. Wow. Guys, I hope you've taken in a lot there, because like I said, I've resonated with a lot with what you've shared. Now, sadly, we come to the end of the podcast, but I could chat to you all afternoon, because I think you just share some great words of wisdom. And I think when you speak, you make everyone listening feel like they can really achieve it. And like I said before we started recording, I'm a huge fan of your work, and I think we need more of you, and we need more people that kind of push us to really value ourselves and value our worth. And thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Stef.
No, thank you. I was probably chatting too much there. I completely lost track of time, but no, it was so nice to chat to you, and I love everything you're doing. So congratulations on your growth.
Thank you so much, Stef. And obviously, before I let you go, you share amazing content online. You've got a book. So if anyone wanted to kind of see more of you or hear more of you and also read your book, where can they go to do so?
So the book is available on Amazon and other retailers like WH Smith and Waterstones. You can also get it in audio, but I often joke, if you didn't like my voice, don't get it in audio. So that's available there. You can follow at FBeingHumble across Instagram, TikTok, and I say Twitter, but I know it's X now. God, I sound so old. And then add me on LinkedIn, because I share lots of advice and insights on LinkedIn as well. And feel free to sign up to our newsletter via fuckbeinghumble.com. Nobody wanted that domain. It's always available. Or just reach out to me at steph@fuckbeinghumble.com if there's something you're interested in. Like I say, I host lots of workshops around professional development, and always keen to spread the Fuck Being Humble message far and wide.
I love it. And thank you so much again, Stef. And guys, please check out Stef at Fuck Being Humble, because she's really motivated me this year. This is the main reason why I'm actually doing a video podcast now. So please go check her out, because she's amazing.